My name is Mery Lynn McCorkle, and I'm doing a show called Natural Disasters as part of the brewery retrospective at the Armory. I moved to LA in the year 2000. I lived in Williamsburg, Brooklyn, and I was one of those people who got to see the towers burn and fall from my fire escape. In fact, since we're approaching that date, the photo footage that you saw, the second plane hitting the second tower and the bomb blast or the fire blast coming out the other side, that was taken by neighbors of mine. And after 9/11, there were no jobs. So, and I was in a battle with a landlord. I had lived without electricity for 18 months. No electricity, no heat, no hot water. And he finally did the right thing and bought us out. We would have been out of the building, a year and a half earlier if he'd been willing to cough up the money, because we still had active leases. But I took the money and I ran to the one warm place that had an art scene, which is Los Angeles. So that's how I ended up here. And when I got here, it was very difficult to break into the art scene. So I decided to start curating. And I did one show at Dirt Gallery and had several people say, "You should talk to John O'Brien at the Brewery Project and do another show there." Well, I talked to John, and amazingly generous person. But part of the parameters for doing the show there is that you had to include your own work. Now, as a New Yorker, you don't curate yourself into shows, even though it is done here. So I had to sit down and think, what kind of show could I put together that would include my work? So I approached John O'Brien, and he was amazingly generous, but part of the parameters for showing was that I had to include my own work in the show. And being a New Yorker, where you never curate yourself into a show, I had to kind of take a step back and figure out how I could do it without it looking like it was a show about my work. And I decided upon a show called Approaching Perfection. I included 11 artists, some from Los Angeles, some from New York, and some from the South, where I'm originally from. And I was extremely pleased with the show. The space was amazing, the high ceilings. It was, after dealing with tiny little alternative spaces in New York, it was like totally glorious what LA is supposed to be. And I had a really good experience. I was included in a couple of other shows subsequently and worked with a person on another show there. But it was a really good way of meeting people, and it was a very positive experience. I wanted to do a show that I could include my own work in, and I thought my work was not like the usual work that I saw in LA. It wasn't about energy, it wasn't about pop culture. It was more a meditative approach to art. So I selected people who did very elegant work that wasn't commercially based. I had one artist, Robin Hill, who put little pins into the wall and hung these mica discs that were used in computers in this huge circle. And whenever anybody moved in the space, they shimmered, they moved. I had one artist who, Robert Winkler, who's now in North Carolina, who did this massive sculpture. He strung metal rods in the ceiling, and he had these swooping paper pieces with sections that were, aluminum. It was just, it was an amazing experience. But all of the work exuded calm and quiet. But collectively, it was just very beautiful. In this current show, the difficulty was that my work has shifted, as you would expect, 6 years later, and everybody else's work has shifted during that time frame. And I realized that I was doing work that was only tangentially connected to a lot of the same people. So I decided to do a show about natural disasters because we're all so very concerned with global warming and our government's total lack of notice of that, and it just seemed like it was a good thing. And besides, one of the great experiences of living in Los Angeles is dealing with earthquakes, floods, and fires. None of those were part of my experience in New York. So Samantha Fields deals a lot with fires. Andre Yee, his work deals with the destruction of the man-made through the course of time. Benicia Gantner uses plastics, and she does trees. And of course, trees compressed for centuries are what plastics are made out of, but her forests are defoliated. And then Wendy Heldman is the other person in the show, and hers specifically deal with flooding, you know, the aftermath of mudslides and flooding. So my work deals with stars and the nature that what we're looking at in the night sky has long ceased to exist, the disaster, natural disaster, which is life in general. So I thought the five of us sort of worked together on that plane. In addition, I had been in a show that Samantha had curated, and I knew that she didn't have time to curate something for this retrospective, so I wanted to make sure she got included in the show.